ᚗᚩᚾᚪᚋᚶ. Good evening, everybody. It's Werman Grimraven, Hayley Gwaidman of Woden's Hearth, the Ancestral Hall, coming to you again today from the North of Scaife in Wackersfeld in the West Thirteen of Yorkshire. It's a bit later tonight because I've literally just come in from a 12-hour shift, so I've wrote my notes down on a pad while I've been at work today because I found a Sharpie to play with. So excuse me from reading from notes, but as I mentioned last week, I was going to use Thor and Thunner as a medium for this, and it's quite a complicated subject, and this is only going to be skirting it. So I just want to make sure I've got these prompts on and I know where I'm going and that I stay on track and hopefully get a good video together rather than just blabbing on. Okay, Thor and Thunner, or Thunner, yeah. Anglo-Saxon Thunner, Thor, the Norse Germanic version of the thunder god. Who are the Anglo-Saxon gods? Right? Are they actually the same as the Norse gods, or are they different? Is it a case of when the Danes settled here and when the Norse first started coming and raiding these shores before they settled, is it a case of it's like 200 odd years apart since the Saxons settled here? They become mostly Christianized by that time, at least at the hierarchy of the Anglo-Saxons, and dialect had changed. They couldn't communicate properly anymore. They could almost still understand it. So is it that the gods have evolved? Because Anglo-Saxon wise, I don't really see them as war gods, whereas Norse wise, they definitely see them as Norse gods. So have they just added on attributes, or is it realistically just a totally different deity that we're talking about? Okay, the scope of a video like this, it has its limitations, because Anglo-Saxon wise, there is not a lot of mythology, background and detail about individual gods, and unlike in Norse mythology, there's hundreds of stories of Thor. We don't find that in the Anglo-Saxon version. Norse wise, we've kind of got an overload, to be fair. Every man and Jack wrote a book about Norse mythology. Some of them are really good, and some are really consistent with what you'd expect to read in these books, and some of them are just nonsense, especially what I call the Marvel myths, because a lot of people have allowed Marvel. I mean, if nothing else, when the Thor films came out, it brought a reinsurgence in and brought the gods back to the forefront of people's minds. But then all of a sudden, we have depictions of the gods that are nothing like we'd expect the Norse gods to be if we follow in the path. And so it becomes from the ridiculous to the sublime, don't it? So Marvel myth, there's a couple of times I might mention that in this video. So what's the point of this video? Like leading on from like the after war and the Ragnarok, it's nothing more than these videos are trying to get people enthused to go out and look further themselves. Right? If you are a Norse heathen, a Norse pagan, Ace of True, Odinist, no matter what, how you define yourself on your path, right? All I'm saying is don't stop looking, because if you're an Englishman and you want to look further back in your bloodline and your ancestry, you're going to have to dig deeper into Anglo-Saxon myth and lore, because yes, the Norse are his ancestors, but it goes further back. It's a lot deeper than that. Okay, so if you want to be on the Anglo-Saxon path, hopefully this enthuses you to start looking that little bit harder for them scraps of evidence that are there, that we can find, and trying to start piece things back together, not through what academics are telling us, right? Through what his hearts are telling us, what his ancestors are telling us by the evidence that we can find. Okay, get out there, research, look into it, and find out as much as you can. It makes your path a lot more wholesome. You feel a lot more accomplished when you've found out for yourself and done a bit of learning. Let's start with the mighty Thor. Anglo-Saxon is not, I will never give up on the Norse gods. I've said this before, they're still our ancestors, still our ancestral gods. And let's be honest, the first emblem I put around my neck was a Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and it's still what I'm wearing now, as we can see. This one, I just never take it off. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's so embedded in Norse mythology is the hammer and Thor. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is Thor a god? Or is Thor actually just a demigod? Let me explain, okay? Right, he's born from wood and jord, right? So he's born from sky and earth. So does this make him earthbound? Does this make him kind of half human, if you like, right? Let's have a look at a couple of bits of evidence that might just point that way. So he is very human in his characteristics, and everybody knows someone who kind of has got Thor's attributes, whether they're a power lifter or this or that, they're big, yeah, powerful people, yeah, quite quick to lose their temper when they don't suffer fools and stuff like that, and the one you don't want ripping by if they get cross, yeah. But when you look at Thor, he's too heavy to go across a Bifrost. That's attested. Right? So forget silly Marvel stuff where he's playing on Bifrost. He doesn't go across Bifrost, he would shatter it. Right? Which says he's actually earthbound. He has to wade through streams and mud and murk and woods and everything to get to the assembly of the gods held at the well. Okay? And that, to me, that's kind of representative of human life. Because again, with this path where it's Norse or Anglo-Saxon, we have to sift through all the nonsense and all the BS and find things out for ourselves. We've got to find the assembly of the gods, just as Thunner does. Yeah. So it's like when people think, oh, I'd love to like do a spiritual journey and visit Asgard. You can't. A human, a living human, cannot enter the realm of the gods. You cannot enter the realm of the gods. And anyone who says they have does an absolute liar. And I'll say that out loud, you're a liar. I do not believe you. You'd turn to ash, you'd be burnt to dust. Okay? When Thor can't cross the Bifrost, don't even pretend that as a human being you can jump out of body and go across it, because you can't. Right? That is fierce belief of mine. I'll never back down from that. Okay, so this is why I think he's kind of earthbound, and probably why he's every common man's favourite or common person's favourite. Okay, he's the defender of Midgard. He's the defender and protector of mankind, as well as the protector of Asgard and the gods. He's the god of thunder, wind, rain, lightning. Yeah, he can control weather patterns. Yeah, we call on him for protection quite a lot, Thor, especially from weather, not wanting to ruin the crops and things like that. But he's also called on for consecration and hallowing rites, whether it's hallowing ground or a wedding or a funeral pyre. These are all attested that these are things that Thor was called for and honoured for. And he does this obviously with the use of Mjolnir, his hammer, his magical hammer, forged by the dwarfs Drok and Sindri. There's another name out there, Eitri, something like that. Right? It's a Marvel comic name, ignore it. King Eitri, right? It's instead of Sindri. That's wrong, okay? The two dwarves' names are Brok and Sindri. They're brothers. They forged the hammer. It's a convoluted story of how Loki joins in to end up having a misformed hammer with a short handle, but it turns out to be the most powerful weapon that the gods have got. You'll know all this, yeah. Anyway, so he also needs jag gripper, I think you pronounce it, which means iron gripper. Because of the shortness of the handle, he cannot wield it, so he has the glove. Some people call it a gauntlet, and it's a slightly different spelling for it. But iron gripper, so he can wield the hammer, and menginjord, power belt, to double his strength. Right, so again, this is kind of saying, yes, Thor is a big, strong deity, but he still needs to add things on to become the all-powerful, mighty Thor. Okay. He's the giant slayer. His main task is defending Asgard from the giants. Okay, we get that, we know that, and obviously then protecting Midgard by protecting, well, the 9 realms really. Okay, he comes from his old Bilskirnir, which it's at least twice I've seen it attested that he comes from the east. I'm pretty sure he's been slaying giants in the east when he comes to Aegeus' feast to ward off Loki and things like that. So there's a couple of times where it says Thor comes from the east, or Thor was away in the east slaying giants or fighting giants. Okay, and he's got a chariot. Now the chariot, I've never seen a name for Thor's chariot, but the 2 goats that pull it now, I'm going to have to read these because I'll never pronounce them. Tangrnistre is teeth bearer, and Tangnostra is teeth grinder. So there is his 2 goats. And in themselves, they're not magical, well, other than they're dragging a demigod around in a big chariot, causing chaos in the universe. But it's like his hammer is, because these goats can be killed, they can be cooked, they can be eaten, and then all the bones are thrown back and wrapped in the skin, and with the mighty Mjolnir they can be resurrected back to life and killed again and eaten again. So Thor's never going to go hungry, is he? End of the day. And again, there's other stories about that. It'll digress too much. Right? So again, that myth in itself is a clear attestation of him using it for an hallowed rite. Yeah, using that. The hammer is to do with death and life, isn't it? Okay. Now it says that Mjolnir can be thrown, it will never miss and always come back to Thor's hand. This is Marvel nonsense. Right? I've never actually read an attestation from that, but is there any evidence to the contrary that backs up what I'm saying? So let's look at a couple of bits. Okay, the Lay of Thrym. Thor's hammer gets stolen. If he's the only one who can wield it, and he needs to put the iron gripper on to even pick it up, right? Who else can nick it? And why don't you just come back to him? Right? It kind of absolutely blows that concept out of water, doesn't it? That he can throw it and it always return to his hand. Okay. And the second one, I've mentioned this before, at Ragnarok, right, why doesn't he just throw it at Jormungand, his mortal enemy, and slay it without having to get up close and end up getting poison spit on him, taking a nice step backwards and falling dead? There was no need for him to die at Ragnarok. If he could have just thrown the hammer, it wouldn't have missed, because it can't, like Woden's spear, and then it would just come back to him. Thor would have remained on the battlefield, and that would make a massive difference, surely. It's Marvel nonsense, isn't it? Right? This about being able to throw it and it just comes back, and that, it's all a little bit too good. Thor's obviously a very masculine character, there's no doubt about it. And he's quite blusterer, and he's quick to anger and stuff like that. Makes lots and lots of threats that he doesn't always carry out, especially against Loki. Okay, but he's often tested. People might not realise that some of the myths about Thor is being tested. So in the Lay of Thrym itself, he's masculine, he's being tested, because he's lost his hammer, he's lost his male power, his symbol of male power. Yeah. And to get it back, he has to dress up as a female. Okay, but as soon as the hammer is placed on the bride's dress to consecrate the wedding, yeah, poof, he's back. He's got his masculinity back. He kills all the giants, yeah, and Thor becomes Thor again and regains his pride. Okay, the Lay of Habad, I've mentioned this before, is a Senna where they're arguing Odin and himself across the pond, and he's not articulate enough to really argue against someone like Odin properly, and he's losing quite badly. But then there's another thing. If you remember when he goes fishing for ᚗᚩᚾᚪᚋ᚞ᚪᚷ and he catches it, he tries that hard, his feet go through the boat and land on the bottom of the sea. Right, and ends up carrying the boat back. So why didn't he just walk through the lake? He's on about, well, it'll take me a day and a half to walk around it. So maybe on Earth, faced against Woden as the ferryman, that Thor doesn't have the attributes of the god. Maybe he's got the attributes of the human. Maybe it's only when he dons on his armour and picks up his hammer and goes slaying the giants and working in the realm of the gods, maybe that's when he becomes the god. I don't know, but kind of makes sense, I suppose. And then there's one more, and it's ᚗᚩᚾᚪᚋ᚞ᚪᚷ. Okay, so Alvis means all wise. Okay, he's a dwarf. He comes on to Thor, I want to marry your daughter. Yeah, I was never going to let a dwarf marry his daughter, right? So his job now is to protect his daughter. But Alvis is called all wise for a reason. He's very clever, and so they start having this riddling contest, and basically knowledge of all the 9 worlds is bartered between them, and it's very clear that Alvis knows a lot more depth of it. So intellectually, he can't beat him, but he outwits him. And he keeps this conversation going until the dawn comes through, the sun hits Alvis and he turns to stone, because that's the mythology of dwarfs. They can't be out in the sun, can they? Protecting his daughter. And it's kind of, yes, if you think about it, it's kind of someone who's done an MVQ against someone who's been to university and got a master's. Yeah, you're not going to know all this, but they're not going to have the street knowledge. Yeah, and so, yeah, you can't defeat him. It's no good just trying to beat him up, because that won't look good, would it? He's suing for a hand in marriage, right? So he outwits him and he wins. Yeah, so he's not thick. Yeah, so if people think that Thor's meant to be a bit of a dummy, he's not. It's just sometimes he acts before he thinks. And I think that's a bit more like what we're talking about. Okay, I could go on and on and on, couldn't I? Because we all know about Thor. There's so many things, but to be honest, we haven't got as much to say about Thunner. So there's no point going on and on and on. So let's have a look at some of what we do know about Thunner. Okay, he's still a champion of the gods. There's no doubt about it. If he's a champion of Midgard and that as well, there's no attestation available to that yet. His parentage is unattested. If we accept he's got the same parentage and he is the same deity, then he's yet again a demigod. The glove, the gauntlet, the belt, there's no attestation to these, okay? But he does have a chariot called Dinny, and it's drawn by oxen. And I believe the oxen can be killed and reborn and eat. I believe so. That's something I've got to double check, but I'm pretty sure that I've read that. And he doesn't have an hammer. He's have Hefenfire, the axe or the axe hammer. Now I've got a thing I was going to bring in and I forgot, because like I say, it's late when I got in. And it is an axe head at one side and an hammer head at the other side, but this has got a nail pull on it. It's like a bushcrafting axe, right? So take that off and you've got that representation, I suppose, where hammer / axe, but it's just attested as a burning axe. I've just seen somewhere else, I've even seen it somewhere, that Thor has a wooden club and not an hammer, in some attestations and stuff like that, right? He can't throw it and it comes back to him. There's no evidence of that. He fights with it. It's a weapon, that's all it is. He fights with it. And it doesn't return to his hand. Now, there's not a lot of attestation and things we can look at on this, but he appears to be more of a vulnerable character than Thor. So let's have a look at one myth that we do know about. His fight against Albion and Albion's brother, whose name just flown out of my head, so I'm not going to wreck my head to try and get that back at a minute. Albion and his brother. So Thunner's fighting them both with Hrafnir, but they're representation of waves, of tidal waves. You call them what you want, but they're big and powerful, right? Because all of a sudden he's blinded by salt and rime, right? And he can't see. Unfortunately, he managed to swing it and Hrafnir around and kill Albion's brother, but then Albion managed to knock the axe out of his hand and it falls down and he can't recall it. And this is what I mean about he's vulnerable. When this happens, he sinks to a knee and he accepts his fate and makes ready to be killed. He gives up. I'm defeated. Yeah. And it's at this point where the little voice starts chirping in his ear, directing him. He gets his hand on the axe, manages to slay Albion, right? And then it's a little bird and it cleans all the rime and salt out of his eyes. And what he sees is a little bird with a red breast and its ruddock, or the robin, basically. And he asks him about him and he tells him who he is and that Odin had named him, right? And so then Thunner takes him into his service. So the robin is actually very important to Anglo-Saxon mythology. I remember when I first came across these stories, and I did a painting for Hengist, my kingsman, and the Hailey Gwyddman of our southern hearth, and it was the flaming axe with the robin on it. And someone made a comment, I just blocked him on Facebook, idiocy. So, you know, ain't that woke? Woke? Got no idea, because these people haven't bothered looking but decide to make a negative comment because they don't understand what it is they're talking about. Yeah, like I said, I just blocked that person. I don't argue with fools, I just get out of life. Right, so other than it being a flaming axe that he fights with, it doesn't seem to have any of the magical properties of Mjolnir. There's no attestation that it's used for consecrating and things, but this is Thunner. This is, if it's the same deity a couple of hundred years earlier, would he have had these same attributes? It's kind of impossible to know. So in conclusion to this video, because it has gone on a bit, it's like, is Thor an evolution of Thunner? That's what you have to find out and decide for yourself. Do you think that Thor's just an evolution over time, or are they separate deities? Because if you go down the Anglo-Saxon path, you've got to decide which one it is that you are actually honouring as the Anglo-Saxon deity. Thunner is clearly older in concept than Thor because he's Anglo-Saxon, not Norse or Norse-Danish, or for example. As Anglo-Saxon heathens, and this is something I'm probably going to bring up at our summer gathering this year, should we have Hrafnir instead of a Mjolnir for holding our rights with? That is real food for thought, and it's something I've hummed and hard about, and I've thought about making one, then I haven't, because I don't just make decisions, that the kindred will decide what they think, and we'll have some time to think about that. It's all just food for thought, guys. I'm not an expert. I don't believe anyone's an expert, because a lot of what we know has been translated so many times and has been lost in translation, and so a lot of it is what people think, what they can dig up, and their interpretation. This is my interpretation. What's your interpretation? Anyway, drink ale. Oh. stay safe out there. Have a really good evening in Woden's Keep.